In the midst of a lavish banquet, he spat directly into his wife's face before dozens of people, then laughed loudly. "You have no value in this family. You are nothing but a burden, a black woman lost in this house." The entire room fell silent. His laughter rang sharp and cold, like a blade twisting into the heart of the woman sitting there. Relatives, friends, business partners, not one dared to speak. Some turned away, some bit their lips, but no one stood by her. She wiped the stain from her dress with trembling hands. No tears, no screams. She sat in silence, as if enduring, yielding, fragile. But that was not the truth, because this woman carried a secret, a truth powerful enough to bring down the arrogant Hale family. A truth that would turn the man laughing with pride into one kneeling, begging for mercy. Sisters, perhaps many of you have been belittled, cornered, pushed to the edge. But remember this: silence does not mean weakness. Sometimes it is the way we prepare for the strongest strike back. If this story touched you, leave a single dot in the comments, so I'll know that we, women, always see and stand with one another. Amara reached for the napkin beside her plate. She dabbed slowly at the stain spreading across her white dress. The cloth could wipe away the spit, but not the shame that clung to her skin. Her eyes stayed dry. Not a single tear dared fall. She would not give Gregory that victory. Around the table, no one spoke. Guests stared into their plates as if the food held sudden importance. Glasses were lifted, set down again, without a sip. Forks pushed food back and forth, not eaten, only moved. The silence was louder than words. Every second stretched, heavy and cruel. Amara could hear her own breath, steady but fragile. Her heart thudded in her chest, yet her face remained calm. She was alone in the crowd, a ghost at her own husband's table. The silence cut deeper than Gregory's insult. It was a room full of witnesses who chose to hide. Pretending not to see was its own form of betrayal. In that moment, the chandelier's light felt harsh, exposing her isolation. Amara lowered her gaze to her lap. Her fingers tightened around the napkin. The room had turned against her, not with words, but with absence, and absence hurt more than cruelty. The silence finally cracked, not with kindness, but with scorn. Vivian Hale leaned forward, her voice sharp, cold, and dripping with disdain. This daughter-in-law came from nothing. She was never worthy of the Hale family. Her words rang clear, slicing through the air like a knife. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one contradicted her. The authority in her tone carried weight. The mother's judgment was final in this house. Across the table, Preston Hale chuckled. The younger brother's laugh was low, amused, and cruel. He swirled his wine as if watching a play unfold for his enjoyment. "This dinner is turning into fine entertainment," he muttered, loud enough for Amara to hear. Each word from them piled onto the wound. Amara sat still, her hands pressed tight on her lap. The insults came not just from her husband, but from the family that should have accepted her. The chandelier sparkled above, elegant and uncaring, as though mocking her pain. Around her, polite faces pretended this was nothing more than family banter. But in truth, it was public execution, cloaked in laughter. And Amara endured, silent, because silence was the only shield left to her. A hand brushed gently against Amara's arm. Selina Ward leaned closer, her voice low, soft, almost protective. "Don't let him break you," she whispered. The words were tender, a rare comfort in the hostile room. Amara turned slightly, her lips pressing into a faint, grateful smile. For one fleeting moment, warmth reached her in the coldness of the banquet. Selina's presence was the single thread of support in a sea of disdain. But when Selina's gaze shifted, it lingered on Gregory. The look in her eyes was unreadable. There was admiration hidden there, subtle but unmistakable. She held it for only a breath before masking it again with loyalty. Amara did not notice. She clung to the illusion of friendship, unaware of the storm forming behind Selina's calm face. The room remained heavy, the weight of humiliation pressing down. Gregory smirked, basking in the spectacle. Vivian's lips curled with satisfaction. Preston's quiet laughter simmered. Only Selena's hand stayed on Amara's arm, but beneath her comforting words lay something dangerous, a seed planted in silence, waiting to grow. Amara's fingers released the napkin at last. She reached for her glass of wine. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost too calm. She lifted the glass, the crimson liquid catching the chandelier's light. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the table. "To family," she said. The words hung in the air, simple yet heavy. The laughter stilled. Glasses that had hovered uncertainly now froze. The hush was absolute, broken only by the faint clink of crystal. For a heartbeat, Gregory faltered. His smirk slipped. Something in Amara's stillness unsettled him. She had spoken so little, yet her tone held quiet defiance. Then, with a sharp laugh, he covered his unease. "Always the quiet one. Always pretending you matter." His words aimed to crush what her silence had built. But the guests heard more than his insult. They had seen the calm behind her eyes, the unshaken hand lifting the glass. Amara lowered her glass again, unbroken. She sat in stillness, her dignity intact. For the first time that evening, the power shifted, ever so slightly, toward the woman in white. The laughter from the banquet still echoed in Amara's mind, but another memory rose sharper. She had walked the long hallway of Gregory's office one late evening. The door stood half open. Inside, Gregory's arms were wrapped tightly around Crystal Monroe, his secretary. Their lips met in a kiss, her laugh bright and reckless. Amara froze at the doorway. The sight struck like fire through her chest. She closed the door before they could see her, her hand pressed against her mouth to hold back the cry. That night, she faced him in their bedroom. Her voice was quiet, almost pleading. "Who is she?" Gregory sat at the edge of the bed, unbuttoning his shirt as if nothing mattered. His tone was sharp, cruel. "Don't start. You're boring. She's exciting. End of story." The words carved into her like glass. Her throat tightened. "You're my husband." His answer was colder. "And you're my burden." He turned away, dismissing her as though she was nothing. The memory left scars she carried in silence. Every insult at the dinner table only reopened that wound. And still, she endured, because breaking was not an option. The first betrayal had torn her heart, but she had still reached out for help. Amara sat across from Vivian Hale in the grand living room, her voice trembling but steady. "Mother Hale, Gregory is unfaithful. I can't pretend not to see it anymore." Vivian sipped her tea slowly, the clink of the spoon echoing in the silence. She placed the cup down with perfect grace, her eyes sharp and merciless. "Crystal is better for Gregory," she said coldly. "She has charm, ambition, presence, qualities you lack." Amara's lips parted, stunned by the cruelty. "You approve of it?" she whispered. Vivian leaned back, her gaze unwavering. "You were never right for this family. You came from nothing, and nothing is what you bring. If my son finds joy elsewhere, why should I stop him?" The words landed heavier than any slap. Amara lowered her gaze, her heart breaking in the quiet of that room. She realized then she had no ally in this house, not even the woman who should have been a mother. That night, the house was silent, but Amara's heart was not. She retreated to her private study, the only corner that felt like hers. A single lamp glowed with soft yellow light. The walls were lined with books, but tonight they offered no comfort. She sat at the wooden desk, her shoulders shaking once. She reached for a handkerchief, pressing it against her eyes. The tears threatened, but never fell. She had promised herself she would not cry for Gregory, not anymore. Her reflection in the window looked back at her. A woman in a white dress, stained and weary, yet still upright. Alone, she whispered to herself, words no one else could hear. They were not pleas, but vows. Her silence was not weakness. It was survival. She had carried scars that no one in that house saw. The chandelier could shine for them, but here in the lamplight her fire smoldered unseen. The night stretched long, heavy with grief. But beneath the grief, a spark lived on, waiting for the moment it would ignite. The next evening, Selina Ward found her in the study. She stepped close, arms wrapping gently around Amara's shoulders. "He's blind," Selina whispered. "You deserve better. Don't let him steal your worth." Amara leaned into the embrace for a brief moment, letting herself rest. Gratitude softened her features. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice thin with exhaustion. Selina's hand squeezed hers and her smile was warm. To Amara, it felt like loyalty. To her heart, it felt like friendship. But when Amara turned away, Selina's eyes shifted. The warmth faded into something else. The image of Gregory flashed in her mind, his voice commanding, his presence larger than life. She remembered his smirk, the way he owned every room. A hunger stirred, hidden deep, unspoken. She blinked quickly, covering it with another gentle smile when Amara looked back. Amara saw comfort. But, beneath the mask, Selina carried a secret temptation, a double life that had already begun to grow. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, Amara reached beneath her desk. She pulled out a small key from the chain hidden under her dress. With steady hands, she unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside lay a stack of documents, neatly bound and carefully hidden for years. Her inheritance, contracts, certificates, proof that she was the true majority owner of Collins Hale Enterprises. 90% of the company was hers. She lifted the papers gently, her fingers lingering on the seals. Memories rose of the day she saved Gregory's empire from collapse. He had thought it was his triumph. He never knew it was her silent sacrifice that kept everything alive. Her face remained calm as she stared at the documents. Calm, but no longer broken. The humiliation she had endured was fuel now. She returned the papers to the drawer, locking it once more. The key pressed cold against her chest, a secret weapon close to her heart. One day soon, she would use it, and the world would see who truly held the power. The chandeliers at the plaza glittered above a sea of gowns and black suits. Cameras flashed in quick bursts, capturing Gregory Hale as he entered with Crystal Monroe on his arm. Her red dress shimmered under the lights, her smile practiced for the crowd. He tightened his grip on her waist, presenting her like a prize. Reporters swarmed, calling his name, snapping pictures as if this moment belonged only to him. Vivian Hale followed close behind, her expression glowing with pride. To her, this was the Hale legacy. Wealth, beauty, and power on display. At the edge of the ballroom, Amara Collins stood half-hidden by a column. Her white dress was simple, unremarkable compared to the jewels and sequins around her. No camera turned in her direction. No hand reached for her. She was invisible, though she was Gregory's wife. The laughter of the crowd echoed like walls around her. She watched Gregory tilt his head, whisper something to Crystal, and the two of them laughed together, bathed in attention. In the corner's shadow, Amara's presence was ignored. Yet, behind her calm gaze, she carried a truth none of them could see. The empire they praised stood not on his brilliance, but on her silent sacrifice. The gala reached its peak when Gregory lifted his glass. Crystal clung to his arm, her smile dazzling under the cameras. The room hushed, eager for his words. He raised the glass high, his voice booming with confidence. "This empire was built by my hands. No one can match what I have created. Tonight is proof of the Hale legacy." Applause erupted, polite but hollow. Guests clinked their glasses, their smiles fixed, though some eyes betrayed doubt. Yet Gregory stood taller, chest swelling, as if their admiration were unquestionable. Vivian's eyes shone with satisfaction. To her, her son had already surpassed every dream. Preston smirked, feeding off his brother's arrogance. Crystal leaned closer, basking in borrowed glory. In the corner, Amara held her glass without raising it. She stayed still, the words cutting but not surprising. His arrogance no longer shocked her. It only deepened the divide. The spotlight bathed Gregory in gold. The shadows held Amara in silence. Pride blazed before the crowd, blind to the storm waiting behind it. The gala wound down. Music softened, guests began to leave, and the glittering room emptied slowly. But in a quiet hallway, Selina Ward stood waiting. Gregory appeared, his tie loosened, his grin sharp. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Amara is weak. She hides in silence. But you understand me better than she ever could." Selina's breath caught. She glanced away, yet her feet did not move. His words dripped like honey, dangerous but tempting. "You've seen it," Gregory continued. "She brings nothing. You, Selina, you see the fire in me. You belong near power." Her heart thudded, torn between loyalty and desire. Amara's pain echoed in her mind, but Gregory's presence pressed against her resolve. She wanted to deny him, to turn away, but her body remained still. Gregory leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "Stay close. You'll see where you truly belong." Selina finally stepped back, shaken, yet her silence betrayed her. She did not refuse. While whispers unfolded in the hallway, Amara sat alone in her study. The lamplight glowed across the desk, casting shadows that felt heavier than the night outside. She opened a drawer, not for the hidden papers, but for the memories they carried. Her mind returned to the day Gregory's company had nearly collapsed. Investors had fled, debts towered, and ruin loomed. He had been desperate, raging, searching for a miracle. He never knew that the miracle had already come from her. With her inheritance, carefully shielded under another name, Amara poured every dollar into the company. She watched in silence as Gregory accepted applause for a rescue he had not earned. Now, as the memory replayed, her chest ached. He was praised as a visionary, while she was dismissed as a shadow. The empire hailed as his genius was in truth built on her sacrifice. She touched the drawer again, her hand lingering on the wood. He thought her powerless, but the weight of her silence was heavier than his arrogance. Days later, the boardroom of Collins Hale Enterprises filled with polished shoes and hushed voices. Gregory paced at the head of the table, energy crackling in his every movement. Preston leaned close, whispering encouragement, feeding his brother's ambition. Gregory slammed his hand on the table, his tone commanding. "We expand into Asia. New branches, new markets. The world will carry our name." One director cleared his throat, hesitant. "It's risky." "The finances," Gregory cut him off with a laugh sharp as a blade. "Failure does not exist under my name. You're either with me or against me." The room fell silent. Faces stiffened, unsure, unwilling to challenge him further. Preston smirked, enjoying the fear that followed Gregory's voice. At the far end of the table, Amara sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She did not speak, and her silence made her invisible. Yet her eyes watched every word, every reckless decision. The pressure mounted, the air thick with arrogance and denial. A storm was building, and Amara knew it would soon break. Selina found Gregory alone after the board meeting. She leaned closer, her tone soft, almost admiring. "She's already broken. Amara has nothing left. Only you shine in this family." Gregory's lips curved into a thin smile. He enjoyed the words, the taste of victory in them. "Of course," he muttered, brushing off the weight of his wife's silence. She was always weak. Selina lowered her gaze, but her words carried further poison. "She hides in shadows. She cannot stand against you. Everyone knows who holds the light. It's you, Gregory." He chuckled, low and dismissive. "Exactly. She is nothing. I am everything." Selina felt her chest tighten. She had betrayed her friend even in thought. Yet she did not take the words back. She let them linger, feeding his pride, letting her own heart drift closer to his dangerous orbit. Amara's absence hung between them, twisted into weakness by their whispers. Gregory reveled in it. Selina remained silent, her mask of loyalty slipping, her loyalty already cracked. That night, Amara returned home. She walked slowly to her room and sat before the tall mirror. Her reflection stared back, pale under the dim lamp. The white dress still carried faint stains, dried and stiff, a cruel reminder. She reached for a cloth and rubbed the fabric. No matter how much she pressed, the mark would not fade. Her fingers trembled, then stilled. Her eyes stayed hollow, but no tears fell. Her hand moved to her chest. She pulled the thin chain, revealing the small key. She clenched it tightly, the metal biting her palm. In the mirror, her reflection changed. Not a victim, but a woman holding on to something greater than they knew. The key was more than metal. It was her anchor. Proof that her silence was not surrender, but patience. Her gaze hardened. For a moment, the woman in the mirror looked like someone waiting, steady, unshaken. The stain on her dress remained, but her grip on the key promised it would not end this way. The following evening, Gregory hosted a smaller dinner at the mansion. Only a handful of guests filled the table. Crystal sat proudly beside him, her laughter ringing bright. Gregory's voice carried across the room. "Isn't she remarkable? So full of life." He poured wine for her, ignoring the wife seated quietly at the far end. The guests shifted, uneasy, but Vivian Hale leaned in, smiling coldly. "She is perfect for this family," she said. Her approval was deliberate, sharp, a knife turned against Amara. Amara sat in silence. The food before her remained untouched. Every compliment given to Crystal struck her like another lash. Gregory's grin widened with each display. To the guests, it was uncomfortable theater. To Amara, it was another public trial, another humiliation meant to break her. But beneath her stillness, her thoughts remained steady. The key in her pocket pressed against her palm, unseen but present. She endured every laugh, every cruel word, letting them believe she was powerless. The dinner dragged on. Laughter rose, cutting through the air like jagged glass. Glasses clinked. Words of praise circled Crystal and Gregory. Amara remained in her seat, silent. She did not protest. She did not rise. Her eyes lowered, her lips pressed tight. She let the storm of contempt pour over her without response. Every glance toward her was laced with disdain. Some smiled pityingly, others sneered. But she did not move. She absorbed it all, as if her silence could shield her from their cruelty. Inside, her chest burned. Her breath came steady but deep, holding back the weight of humiliation. On the surface, she looked unmoved. Her stillness was mistaken for surrender. But to Amara, silence was armor. Each insult stored, each slight remembered, waiting for the day she would release them all. The room saw weakness. She carried resolve, and in that quiet, her strength only grew. The house was still when night returned. Amara sat at her desk, the lamp casting long shadows. She pulled the small key from its chain, unlocking the drawer once more. The documents lay where she had left them, neat, untouched, undeniable. She placed her hand on them, steady, unshaken now. Her whisper filled the quiet room. "Tomorrow, everything changes." She locked the drawer again, sliding the key back under her dress. Her fingers lingered there, pressing against her heart. The night stretched heavy, but she felt no fear, only certainty. All the silence she had endured, all the humiliation, all the betrayals, they would meet their end with the dawn. She rose from the chair, her back straight. In the mirror, the woman in white no longer looked broken. Her reflection was ready. Tomorrow, the world would see the truth. Morning light cut through the tall glass walls of the tower. The boardroom gleamed with polished wood and steel, reflecting the city skyline outside. Every seat was filled. Directors sat in stiff suits, their eyes fixed on the man at the head of the table. Gregory Hale stood tall, his suit sharp, his voice booming with pride. He struck his chest lightly as if to stamp his authority. Johnson Global will expand across the world. Europe, Asia, beyond. This is the moment we rise. The room murmured. Some nodded with forced smiles, others exchanged cautious glances, but no one interrupted. Gregory thrived in their silence. His arrogance filled the space, as if no doubt could touch him. Preston sat near his brother, eyes glinting. He whispered now and then, feeding Gregory's boldness. Vivian lifted her chin, glowing with maternal pride. Crystal leaned close, her hand brushing his sleeve, her smile wide. At the far end sat Amara Collins, a plain black dress, hands folded neatly. She looked invisible among the glitter of ambition. No one turned toward her. No one guessed she held the storm that would shatter the room. Gregory paced, his words sharp and full of triumph. "History favors the bold. We will not shrink. We will dominate." Applause followed, shallow and nervous. Then his gaze slid down the table. His eyes locked on Amara. His smirk returned. "And you," he said loudly, pointing at her, "do you have anything to add? Or will you stay silent, as always, pretending you matter?" A ripple of laughter moved around the room. Some directors forced it, others stayed quiet, uncomfortable. Yet no one spoke against him. Amara lifted her eyes slowly. She did not answer, her calmness unsettled, though it looked like surrender to them. Gregory pressed harder, voice rising. "Nothing? That's what I thought. You never had a voice, not at home, not here." The words struck like whips, meant to crush what little dignity remained. The room seemed to tilt under his scorn. But Amara's silence was not weakness. It was waiting. Every insult added weight to the moment she would rise, and rise she would. The room buzzed with Gregory's triumph. Then, slowly, Amara pushed back her chair. The sound echoed louder than the scattered applause. Heads turned. She rose, steady, every movement deliberate. Her hands rested on a folder she placed on the table. Her fingers lingered on the cover before she opened it. The rustle of paper broke the silence. Pages spread across the polished surface, contracts and certificates lined with official seals. The sound of each sheet sliding out was sharp, heavy, final. The directors leaned forward. Preston frowned. Vivian stiffened. Gregory's smirk wavered, though he tried to laugh it off. Amara did not rush. She unfolded the documents one by one, her face calm, her voice still unspoken. Suspense tightened the air. Every eye in the room shifted from Gregory to her. Her silence now demanded their attention. The power she had hidden began to take shape before them. The buildup was complete. The strike was coming. At last, Amara lifted her eyes. Her voice was clear, steady, unshaken. "I own this company. 90% of it." The words fell like thunder. The room froze. The air stilled. For a moment, no one moved. Then the silence broke with gasps. Directors turned to each other, disbelief written on their faces. Some shook their heads. Others whispered in urgent tones. Gregory barked out a laugh, desperate. "Ridiculous. She's delusional. Sit down, Amara, before you humiliate yourself further." But his laugh rang hollow. His color drained, his confidence cracked. Vivian slammed her hand on the table, her face red with rage. "Impossible!" Preston stared, lips pressed tight, calculating. Crystal paled, shrinking in her seat, and Amara remained still, her presence unshaken. Her words could not be taken back. They had landed. The truth had been spoken, and nothing in that room would ever be the same. The directors reached for the papers spread across the table. Hands flipped through contracts, signatures, seals. Each page carried the weight of truth. One man's hand shook as he turned the final sheet. His voice broke the tense silence. "It's real. All of it. These documents are valid." The words spread like wildfire. Chairs scraped as others leaned in to confirm. Murmurs filled the room, louder, heavier. Some faces went pale, others lit with shock. Gregory's jaw tightened. He tried to speak, but no sound came. The ground under him shifted, and the empire he claimed trembled. Vivian sat rigid, denial burning in her eyes. Preston's smirk had vanished, replaced with raw calculation. Crystal looked at Gregory with fear, not pride, but all eyes kept returning to Amara. The woman they had dismissed, the shadow they ignored, now stood at the center. The proof was undeniable. The truth belonged to her, and the room would never see her as invisible again. Gregory's face flushed dark red. His fists clenched, his breath sharp and uneven. The arrogance that once filled the room cracked like glass under a hammer. He tried to speak, but his words tangled, broken by fear. Vivian Hale slammed her hand on the polished table. Her voice rose in a shriek. "This cannot be! It is impossible!" Her rage shook, not from strength but from panic. The ground she stood on had been pulled away. Preston sat frozen, lips sealed tight. A drop of sweat slid down his temple. The smirk that once lived on his face had vanished. For the first time, calculation failed him. He stared at the documents as if they had betrayed him. Selena's eyes widened, her breath uneven. Images rushed back, the whispers to Gregory, the silence that betrayed Amara, the moments she chose admiration over loyalty. Shame coiled in her chest, twisting her heart. The villains who once controlled the room now trembled. Power shifted, no longer theirs to wield. Amara's calm presence stood against their collapse, steady as stone. The downfall had begun, and nothing could stop it. The room stilled as Amara turned her eyes on Gregory. Her voice was calm, yet it pierced sharper than any shout. "You spat in my face," she said. "Today I return your gift, not with spit, not with rage, but with truth. And truth does not ask for your forgiveness." The silence that followed was heavy. Every director felt the weight of her words. The insult he had thrown at her, so public and cruel, now lay shattered at his feet. Gregory's lips parted. He tried to answer, but no words came. His humiliation was complete. The echo of his cruelty had been turned back on him, transformed, and shown to justice. Vivian lowered her head. Preston avoided her gaze. Selena's eyes filled with tears she could not control. Amara did not gloat. She did not smile. She simply spoke the truth, and the truth alone destroyed him. The poetic justice was complete. The humiliation once hers now belonged to him. Amara lifted her chin, her posture straight, her voice steady. "Gregory Hale, you are no longer CEO. From this day forward, this company will be led with integrity. Not arrogance, not deceit, integrity." The words cut through the room, sharp and final. For a moment, silence reigned. Then a single pair of hands clapped. Another followed. Soon, the entire board rose, applause thundering against the glass walls. Gregory slumped back, eyes wide with disbelief. His empire had been stripped from him in a single breath. Vivian's hands shook, her lips pressed tight in fury she could not voice. Preston stared at the floor, defeated. Selena covered her face, her shoulders trembling with guilt. She had betrayed a woman who now stood in triumph. Amara gathered her papers calmly. The chains of silence, of humiliation, of betrayal had been broken. She had not only reclaimed her dignity, she had claimed her power. The company, the room, the future now belonged to her. Amara closed the folder and walked toward the door. Her steps were calm, her back straight, her presence commanding. The morning light spilled through the glass walls, painting her in gold as she passed. Behind her, Gregory collapsed into his chair. His hands trembled against the table. The once proud man looked hollow, broken. Crystal Monroe slipped out quietly, her eyes downcast. She no longer clung to him. The future she imagined at his side had vanished in an instant. Vivian sat rigid, her lips pressed tight, her silence louder than her earlier screams. She had no words left. Selena lowered her head and wept. The weight of her betrayal crashed against her chest. The friend she abandoned had risen beyond her reach. Amara did not look back. Her silence was no longer weakness. It was victory. She stepped into the light, leaving the ruins behind. Every eye followed her, not with disdain, but with awe. The woman in white had become the figure none could ignore. True power does not lie in wealth or in fame. It lives in dignity, in the courage to endure, and in the strength to rise when the world has pushed you down. Amara had been silent for years. She carried humiliation, betrayal, and loneliness. Yet she chose not to break. She chose to wait. And when her voice finally rose, it was enough to bring down an empire. Her story is not only about revenge, it is about justice. It is about every woman who has ever been dismissed, mocked, or silenced. Silence is not weakness. Silence can be strength. And when the moment comes, that strength can turn the tide. If this story has touched you, share it. Let it reach the women who need to know they are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe and stay with us. Together, we will keep telling the voices that matter, the voices that refuse to be forgotten.